Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. Well, technically this is not a video, it is sort of, but it's mostly audio because I was actually interviewed on a terrestrial radio station about Linux and Linux user groups. I was on North Dakota's radio station called KNOX 107.9 FM, and this interview talks about various different things about Linux user groups, how Linux groups can be beneficial to anyone regardless of their skill level, and why somebody would want to go and attend to one. I actually run my own user group for Linux, and I thought it'd be really cool to talk about it on a radio station, so when I got the chance, why not? I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, let's just get to it.
And I believe we finally got connected up with Michael. Tinnell is his name. Michael Tinnell, like I walked through a tunnel is how that's pronounced. So it's spelled tunnel, but it's pronounced Tinnell. Did I get that right, Michael? Is that correct?
Well, it is correct as in the pronunciation, but there's two L's, so that's why it's special.
That's why it's special. Okay, yeah. Well, that's what happens. You start adding extra L's in there, you never know what's going to turn up, right? So, exactly. So Michael is here to talk with me a little bit about this Linux user group. So first of all, let's start with this, Michael. I think everybody understands the basic concepts of operating systems. They know that their computer runs Windows, or they know that they have a Mac that runs Mac OS, or they know they've got an Apple phone that runs iOS, or an Android that runs, a different phone, that runs Android OS and stuff like that. So first of all, let's start with Linux. What is Linux for those that maybe don't know?
Well, Linux is an operating system similar to Windows and Mac OS, except much, much better. Linux is in many ways simpler to use, and in the way it's built, it also makes it much more secure when compared to Windows. For example, I haven't had a virus in over a decade thanks to using Linux. Oh, and there's so many different things about it, but essentially it is a free and open source operating system. So free as in freedom and also money. So you can basically do whatever you want with it and customize it to whatever you want it to do. But at the same time, it doesn't cost any money to get started with it. You just go to a website that has like, for example, Ubuntu.com, where you can download the ISO, and then you can install it to your computer and have a new operating system in probably like 20-30 minutes.
So I've recently, through a mutual friend of ours, I've recently started playing with Linux. I've got a MacBook that I have dual booting to both Mac OS and to Linux, and I've got a Dell XPS that runs Linux. I believe it's KDE, if I remember correctly. Is there, for the people that go, yeah, I just want to be able to use all the same stuff that all my friends use. I don't care about security because I got, Kaspersky, or I've got McAfee or Norton antivirus or whatever, and I just don't care. Is Linux for them too?
Oh yeah, it's basically for anybody. I wouldn't have said this like 10 years ago when I first started. Well, actually, when I first started using it was like 20 years ago. But I wouldn't have said it back then. But now it's easy to anybody can use it. Like I've actually given it to people who are in their 80s, and they're no problem. They just use it however they want, because it's like, for the most part, most software is available for for all platforms. Like if you have Firefox or Google Chrome or whatever browser you want, it's typically available in all of them. And there might be some situations where, let's say, a business has a specific type of software that they need to run their business. Right. That software, if it's like some proprietary software that's specific to their industry, that might not work on every platform. But in most cases, the vast majority of software is available on every platform, and it's actually becoming more and more true with newer, different types of technology, like Electron apps, where they make one application that works on everything. Oh, okay. So those things are more and more likelihood that it will work. So it's like probably I'd say like 90% of stuff will work.
So this Linux user group thing that's taking place, it's happening tonight at the University of North Dakota in Gamble Hall. Room 145 at 6 p.m. Right. What is it? Is it just a group to introduce people to Linux, or is it a bunch of you Linux nerds getting together and nerding out, and I'm going to be lost if I go by myself, or what's it? Tell us a little bit about the Linux user group.
Well, it's kind of both, really. Linux user groups are local groups that allow you to meet new people who are also interested in Linux, whether that means whatever their level of skill. These kinds of groups sometimes have casual chat meetings, or in other cases, there might be presentations to learn from people who are involved in various different aspects of the Linux world. The presentations could be for all kinds of things, like Raspberry Pis to server management to all kinds. So you could be someone could be just like brand new to Linux and go to these groups and meet new people and learn, and if they have any questions, they can get answers there, or they can be like just wanting to learn like really in-depth topics. So it depends on like the particular event, but most of the time there's basically all of it.
So the Linux user group could actually be, if you are a basement dwelling Cheeto eating computer nerd and you're looking for a girlfriend, a Linux user group could be the place for you.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I don't.
That's fantastic. But it is a place to, you don't, I guess I bring that up as somewhat of a silly approach to saying there's more to it than just a bunch of nerds nerding out. There's going to actually be
there's all kinds of types of people. Like,
Nice.
and the best part is that when I go to these groups, there's a variety of different types of people, whether they're very skilled or they've just heard of it. Like for example, they've heard just someone who's listening to the show right now, and they just heard about Linux or what it was. That could be those types of people could also learn a lot, or they could bring their computer, like a spare computer they want to try Linux on, and people will help them install it because
Okay.
they don't have to learn everything from scratch. You can go to these groups to get a lot of help. And the best part about these groups is that most of the time, the people who are there will not only are happy to help you, they will jump at the chance to help someone learn Linux like from scratch. So like they just now started, they would like happy to help install it and get everything set up for them and everything. So like Lugs are like a great opportunity for enthusiasts to talk with like-minded people, and for people who aren't as familiar with Linux and are interested in learning more, or as I like to call them, soon-to-be enthusiasts.
Now you mentioned,
so they can learn all kinds of stuff like that.
You mentioned Raspberry Pis, and I want to come back to that too. But first, you talked about Linux both being free and more secure. In today's world, when we're talking about all of the identity theft and all of the junk that gets the tracking stuff that happens with our computers and all that kind of thing, I think that's going to be attractive to a lot of people because, first of all, free. I'm sick and tired of having to buy a new subscription to my virus software every 6 months and paying $50 for that. I get tired of having to, even though I have the virus protection, it doesn't ever work, and I still get viruses and have to deal with all of that stuff. And I keep all of it. And we had people call in earlier in the show and say, I keep all of my passwords in a file or on a piece of paper or something like that. And it's a risky proposition to have that kind of stuff. So is that really the biggest benefit of Linux? Is the freedom and the freeness and the security of it?
The security and privacy of it are probably the biggest things. The free is just an extra benefit to it that it's definitely going to be beneficial to people who don't have a lot of money to spend on their systems. And most software in Linux is also free. But typically people, when they do it in the sense of, here's the software, but if you would like to give us some money as like a donation, $10, $20, whatever. Right. There's no obligation, but it's definitely something that people should do if they find it useful. But there's the reason why it's great is because there's no obligation whatsoever to provide any money. Right. It's just, we want you to use the better system because we want you to have a secure setup. We want you to have a good privacy. You don't have to worry about, like Windows right now. Windows 10 is just a cesspool of privacy violations because it has like telemetry for everything you do. Like if you open up an application on your computer, it tells Microsoft that you did. Like, why did they need to know that you're running a particular piece of software? It's just obsessive. Like it's, I don't know. It's like the latest version of Windows, while runs better and faster, it also tracks whatever you do. So so if your own system, like not even if you have a virus, like your system itself is kind of a virus in the sense of privacy.
So you're paying Microsoft to be a virus essentially on your computer. So you mentioned the Raspberry Pi. Now I know we have a TV screen in our studio that has like upcoming events and weather and time and some of that kind of stuff. And I believe I remember correctly, that's running on a Raspberry Pi. What exactly is a Raspberry Pi?
Well, a Raspberry Pi is a small $35 computer. Like it's a all self-contained computer in this one device, and it allows you to learn programming or implement various different kinds of software like you did. So you can build DIY solutions for all sorts of things. For example, you could do digital signage, where you're like you could set up a TV connected to a Raspberry Pi,
right?
And then you could say like like at a restaurant, or let's say like a fast food place, you have the screens that
the
have
digital
the menu.
menus and stuff.
Yeah, you can build your own using that kind of software. And there's also software that's like that for free with using a Raspberry Pi and Linux. You can also set up an entertainment center, so you can have like your own movie watching, TV watching interface built into your TV using a Raspberry Pi. You can set up retro consoles, which allows you to play old games like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all kinds of stuff all in one device. And you can even do like DIY projects where you could create your own like smart garage door at your house with the Raspberry Pi, so you could like connect it to your phone, and then when you get to your house, you could just use your phone to send a message to the Raspberry Pi, so it would open your door for you.
So as you drive up to the door, it automatically opens the door for you.
Yeah, it could. Based on like once your phone connects to the Wi-Fi, it could send a signal to your Raspberry Pi or various different other kinds of ways. You could also create like your own virtual assistant, kind of like Amazon's Echo devices. You can create your own with the Raspberry Pi with like custom software. You can even use Amazon software if you wanted to, but you could also use the open source Mycroft project, which is a similar thing but is an open source approach.
Now, you mentioned that there's, at these Linux user groups, that there's some various events and things that will happen from time to time. And you mentioned, well, maybe you didn't mention, maybe this is in the information that Noah sent me, but Brandon Johnson from Red Hat is going to be there tonight at the one at UND tonight. Who is Brandon Johnson and what is Red Hat?
Brandon Johnson is an employee of Red Hat, and Red Hat is a company that has been around since 1994.
Okay.
And they have been doing they build an operating system based on Linux that is for enterprise servers and big companies, so that you can deploy different types of software for your company or for your services and everything. And typically, Red Hat is one of the most popular for those kinds of implementations. But Red Hat, Brandon Johnson will be talking about the latest new release for Red Hat, which is the Red Hat Enterprise Linux, aka RHEL 8.
Okay, so he's going to be talking about that. So if you're a small business owner and maybe want to know how you can use some of this free technology that's more secure in your business, that may be the guy to talk to tonight. So it literally is not just for a bunch of computer geeks, but there's some practical application here.
Yeah, all kinds of different people could go to it, and including that with a business thing. One of the best things about the business approach that Red Hat has is that they have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and they also have CentOS. And CentOS is a open source, but they're both open source. But CentOS is a free, no license needed type of software. So it's basically the Red Hat Enterprise Linux is available to anyone if you wanted to for certain ways of techniques, but it's meant to be licensed by a company to get tech support.
Right.
So you could have someone to call at Red Hat to fix it. But if you just want to deploy the software yourself and you don't want to purchase any support packages or contracts, then you can use CentOS, which is basically the same thing. It's just in a different branding because it's a different approach. It's like this: use at your own. You're gonna have to not risk, but your own. You're gonna have to figure it out yourself.
Right.
But if you want a support contract, then you contact Red Hat and get the Red Hat software.
Now, you mentioned earlier just the all the different ways that people are using Linux to implement the various software and stuff in their computers and whatnot. And speaking on the terms of security and safety and some of that and identity theft and all that stuff that goes on, one of the things that I get frustrated, I just got a brand new cell phone, and one of the things that I get frustrated with is every time I get a new phone, I got to go through and delete a bunch of garbage software that is pre-installed on my phone. Is there ever going to be a point where we're going to see a Linux-based operating system that's going to compete with Android and iOS?
Well, the interesting thing is that Android is based on Linux.
Okay.
But it's also heavily modified. So that the issue of having all that worthless bloatware is because that Google creates Android using Linux, but they didn't really stick to the philosophy of the Linux ecosystem. So they did a bunch of extra proprietary stuff on top of it and set up these bloatware systems and all this other stuff. But there are actually alternatives to that as well. They're a little bit more complicated than regular Linux distros because if you have like your laptop or your desktop, it's very easy to set up a Linux system. And if you have you can watch a video on YouTube and it's really easy to set it up.
Right.
But with phones, there are super specific types of devices. So the hardware in the phones are kind of locked to those phones. So if you create an operating system for a phone, it only applies to that particular model of that manufacturer. So it's a lot harder to make software for a variety of different phones because there's so many of them.
Right.
But there are a couple. One is Lineage OS, which takes Android and removes all the garbage.
I see.
And you still have all the benefits of Android, but you don't have all the excessive violations and privacy and everything.
Yeah.
And all the bloatware and stuff. And then you also have like something like Ubuntu Touch, which is much more direct to the Linux philosophy.
Do you then run into with some of that stuff? Because one of the things that my son and I have had this conversation, like he's like, look, I don't care if Google knows that I've been at this restaurant or that restaurant or whatever. I love the convenience of being able to say, okay, Google, tell me this, or okay, Google, tell me that. And I just don't have to. I don't care about the privacy part of it because I don't really have anything to hide or whatever. Do you lose in going to some of this stuff with the Linux and being a little bit more secure? Do you lose some of the what's the word I'm looking for? The convenience, I guess, of it all.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you want to use Linux or you want to use Lineage OS instead of Android, you can totally do that and still use the software that you want to keep. So, for example, in most cases, most software is available for Linux desktops, but it's also might not be, but most of the time it is.
Right.
And you can still install that software. And you if you have a certain music player you want to use, and it probably works on Linux, you could still use that software even if it isn't, respecting the privacy aspects of it. Linux helps it automatically respect more privacy because, for example, Windows has a feature where you can tell, for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason you could have a location feature in Windows 10 to tell applications where you are.
Right.
And why does this music player need to know where I am, kind of thing.
Right.
And by default, Linux doesn't allow any of that to happen.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have to worry about random things like that happening, but you could still choose to use those services if you wanted to. So if you installed Lineage OS in your phone and you wanted to use Google Maps, for example, you could totally just install Google Maps and use it. I
see. Okay. All right. Well, let's that's kind of a sidetrack for me or whatever, but just something that was interesting to me. So back to the Linux user group. It's tonight at Gamble Hall, room 145, starting at 6:00 tonight, correct?
Right, 6:00 in the University of North Dakota.
And let's see, what was I want to get one more. I think that was all I was looking for. It's at 6:00 tonight, or starts at 6, goes until kind of whenever, I would assume. And I'm losing my. Anyway, I was digging through my notes there.
It's usually on average about a couple hours or so. It depends.
Oh, did I lose you?
It depends on it's like a couple hours essentially.
Okay. Alrighty, sounds good. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. It is genuinely for, I guess, really anybody. If you're interested in learning more about Linux, if you're interested in just learning a little bit more about technology, this is probably the place to go. It's at UND Gamble Hall, room 145 tonight at 6:00. Yeah. Brandon Johnson from Red Hat's going to be there. It's going to be a pretty cool experience, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be great. And just real quick, I want to let you know that it is a free to attend. It's completely free. The registration is at gfklinux.org.
Okay.
And you can just go there and sign up. And you can also get you can subscribe to the email newsletter to get notified when new upcoming events are happening. But typically, it's about every month. There's gonna be the last Friday of every month is when the event's gonna happen. But you can also go there and register to get notified anyway.
Okay, so this is going to be an ongoing thing then too.
Yes, it's going to be once a month, and there's going to be various different presentations from various different people across the spectrum of what type of software that they work on, or maybe they're like designers or whatever, how they use Linux, that kind of thing. And
one of them being our very own Noah Chalaya, who fills in for us from time to time here on KNOX as the host of his podcast, Ask Noah Show, and I believe he actually does some work with you with Destination Linux. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're both we're co-hosts on that particular podcast. I run a Linux-related projects at TuxDigital.com, where we develop educational content for people to use, learn, and enjoy Linux. This includes like how-tos and tutorials, and inside of that stuff is podcasts that we create, like a weekly news podcast, This Week in Linux, and a discussion podcast. Like it's approached to be informative, but also at the same time very entertaining. And that one's called Destination Linux that we're both on. Awesome.
Sounds good. And you're also a graphic designer. Give us a plug for that as well.
Oh, you can go to ViggieWakes.com, VISUEX.com, where I design software I design graphics for logos and branding or business identity, stuff like that. And as well as we also do like marketing and SEO and all this like social media stuff, all that good stuff.
Cool. Sounds very, very good. Again, thank you, Michael, and look forward to meeting you someday soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one. 701-77.
Thank you very much for watching / listening to this video / audio segment from a radio station. If you have any feedback or suggestions about this kind of content, please let me know in the comments below. If you like this kind of content, please remember to like that smash button. If you are new to the TuxDigital channel, then please consider subscribing. This interview was oddly good timing regarding Linux user groups because I'm actually working on something that will be beneficial to Linux user groups that I will be announcing fairly soon, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't to get updated on that information, because it will be definitely very important whether you want to attend a Linux user group or whether you run one. They will be very beneficial to have this information, so be sure to subscribe. And as always, keep using, learning, and enjoying Linux.